Hi there, today we are going to do a properties of matter lab that is available in my full year lab manual, and that is the lab on Oobleck. Now, you may have heard of Oobleck. It is actually just a mixture of cornstarch and water. And all we're gonna do is try to figure out if Oobleck is a solid or a liquid. Typically, when I do this lab with my students, I prepare the Oobleck for them. But if you are doing this at home, or if you're a teacher setting this up for your students, it is usually a cup of cornstarch to about 3/4 of a cup of water. So it's a 3 parts water to 4 parts cornstarch. I like to usually do food coloring. I'm not going to today just because I'm wearing a light colored sweater. I'm not interested in accidentally dyeing my clothes here, but that is also an option. When I do the food coloring, I like to dye the water and then mix that with the cornstarch. I find that it is the easiest way to get everything to blend together nicely. I've measured using my 1/8 cup measuring cup, just 4 scoops, so 1/2 cup of the cornstarch, and now I'm going to do 3 parts water. Again, if you were doing this with food dye, you'd want the food dye in this water here. This, I usually do it by eye, honestly, but this recipe works just fine. And I'm going to do my best to mix it, but it's going to be hard to do because Oobleck kind of has properties of both solid and liquid at the same time, which is why this is a perfect substance to practice identifying properties of solids and liquids and phases of matter. And this actually turned out to be a little bit more wet than I wanted it to be. My cornstarch is fairly new, so it is possible that it was a little fluffy. But you see that? Quite gross. I'm gonna add a little bit more of the powdered cornstarch until I get the consistency really that I'm looking for. This is a little too wet. All right, this is kind of the consistency that we're looking for. I'm just gonna clear my area a little bit because I don't wanna make a giant mess. I know I'm going to. But here we go. So I have some Oobleck stuck to my spoon here, and it's actually stuck also on my countertop. And if I kind of push on it, it'll act like a solid. So we can see that it pours, it runs, but we can also get in this container and pick it up and kind of roll it and apply pressure. So if I'm applying the pressure to it, it will act more like a solid, but if I release it, it acts like a liquid. So the reason I like Oobleck to describe the properties of matter is simply because it reminds my students that you can change phase of matter by applying pressure. We all know that you can change phase of matter using heat or lack of heat. We can do that with, boiling something on the stove or putting something in the freezer. You can change the phase of matter. But many of us forget that you can also change the phase of matter by applying or removing pressure. And that is true for really all phases of matter. If you take a liquid, it's hard, but if you take aside from Oobleck, if you have a liquid and you compress it, you can actually turn it into a solid. And if you have, it's way easier to do this with gas. You can compress gases down until they are liquid. If you have ever used like keyboard cleaner or some other type of like compressed gas, you may have shaken the bottle to find that it sounds and feels like there's a liquid inside, and that's because it's compressed air. The air has been squished down so that it has a like a liquid inside. So again, we can like scoop this out and press on it, and if you apply the pressure, then it will behave like a solid. Really not that great for sharing on a YouTube video, but way more fun to play with in person, for real. I have done this with both store brand and name brand cornstarch, and truthfully, I haven't noticed a difference in performance. So if you are interested in doing this, I got a pound of cornstarch today for like $1.60. And it's a lot of fun to play with. It's also food grade, so safe for kids who put fingers in their mouths. If you were interested in doing this with small kids, this is still a little more wet than I would like it to be, but you can kind of see, like, as I apply the pressure here, it's acting more like a solid. I mean, I can like feel it between my fingers, and then it runs. I'm actually going to dry this up a tiny bit so you can kind of see it roll into a ball a little bit better. All right, here we are with some Oobleck. This one's a little bit more dry than it was before. I added just a little bit more cornstarch. My dog is here licking it up off the floor, which is not harmful, not recommended, but not harmful. So here you can see it is acting like a solid. I'm able to hold the whole ball in my hand, but if I release the pressure, now it starts to act like a liquid. So again, we can change phase of matter of really anything by applying or removing pressure. If you have a liquid and you remove quite a bit of atmospheric pressure, it can turn into a gas quite easily. It's just that adding and removing pressure is not something that we can very easily do in your kitchen or even in a high school chemistry lab. It's something that requires some pretty decent equipment. So the Oobleck is a nice trade-off for things of that nature. Now, cleaning this up is kind of a pain. It can go down the drain, but it can very easily clog your drain. So I would say definitely run quite a bit of water with this. It's best just to put it in the garbage as long as it's not too wet. And then you kind of just let this counter dry up a little bit, and then it will turn back into a cornstarch powder. You probably shouldn't cook with it after playing with it. It's garbage at that point, but you can rehydrate it and play some more later. So that's it on Oobleck and the phases of matter. I will say, if you are a teacher, the kids are going to make a huge mess. Anticipate that. I'm an adult and I made a huge mess. They will, if you set it in pans, they will be punching it, because when you apply a bunch of pressure, it will like pancake. It turns into the solid and it's more crumbly. But when you let it sit, it's liquid again. All right, thanks for joining me. Have a great time. Please let me know what you did to Oobleck to manipulate it to find its properties.